Business is put on the agenda. May I have a motion and a second discussion? CAO Yansu, I believe you had one item.
Yes, we actually have two items. One is we need to appoint voting delegates to the Municipal Insurance Association and the Municipal Finance Association.
Okay, thank you.
As well as seconds. And the second amendment is that...
That'll be 12A, voting delegates to MIA and MFA.
Under new business.
Okay.
And the second item is to a recommendation from your worship to strike a parking committee and appoint members to that.
Thanks, that'll be 12B.
Correct.
Parking committee. Okay, thank you. Anything else? So all in favor of the, sorry, Greg?
I don't know if it needs to be in the agenda so much. Just have a bit of a report from RCMPE division from today. Under reports, council.
Let's do that. We'll just note that as 8C2 RCMP. Let's call it that for now. Okay. Going. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. The next item on the agenda is public participation. Were there any sign-ups? I shall check. Thanks, Fred. No, thank you. We'll move on to delegations. The first delegation is Sharon Gregson. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to move over here.
So while Sean is very kindly setting up the PowerPoint for me, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Sharon Gregson, and I work with an organization called the Coalition of Child Care Advocates of British Columbia. I am one of the only staff of the organization, but I have the pleasure of traveling around the province and in fact across Canada and talking with people about a solution to the current childcare crisis in our province and our country. And so I go to every municipality, big and small, wherever I can speak to councils and school districts and community gatherings, talking to them about what's known now as the $10 a day childcare plan. So I was elected twice to the Vancouver School Board, didn't run the last time, in order to spend more time talking about childcare. You should have before you this wonderful little booklet, which is good bedtime reading, along with a couple of fact sheets inside, which speak to what our $10 a day plan will be for parents, how it's the best way to alleviate family poverty in our province, and a fact sheet on what the plan would be for business in our province. So I would encourage you to have a chance at a later date to read that. You'll also have in your package 9 pages, a list of supporters, organizational supporters of the material I'm going to present to you today. And you'll see 45 now municipal governments, local governments, the village of Slocan, the latest one to be added yesterday in fact, the United Way of the Lower Mainland, Van City, Surrey Board of Trade, so quite a diverse group of supporters on that list. So you can imagine that to try and present a provincial plan for early childhood education to you in 5 or 10 minutes is challenging. And so I'm just going to give you the highlights, and there is more in-depth policy work that's in the material that you have in front of you. So I'm wondering, do I have a clicker, Shona?
There is one, I don't know.
Or shall I just wave at somebody?
Or you can come sit here if you want.
You know what, I can move it forward
Okay,
if you just
that
let
would
me.
be great. So I'll just let you know that the name of the plan,
There we go.
the name of the plan actually is the Community Plan for a Public System of Integrated Early Care and Learning. Not a name that anybody really remembers or works well on social media. So very quickly, it became branded as the $10 a day childcare plan because that's the maximum amount that parents would pay for this service. And the plan was costed out with our colleagues at UBC. So, just a brief overview, you'll know that the majority of mothers with young children are in fact in 2015 in the labour force, whether on a part-time or full-time or contract basis. And even, interestingly enough, mothers who have children who are very young, 0 to 2 years old, even the vast majority of them, 65%, are in the workforce. And so We know then that those mothers, while they're working, need some form of non-parental care, and yet we only have enough licensed childcare spaces in our province for 18% of children. So we have a large group of children who are in the unregulated market, and some of that will be care with grandparents, which would be lovely, or even great-grandparents, as the case may be, but some of it is in the unregulated, unsafe, potentially illegal childcare system, and that's what we're addressing today. So you might also know that BC in 2013 once again had the highest rate of child poverty in Canada, at just over 18% of children. And for children who are growing up with a single mother, they basically have a 50-50 chance of living in poverty. Now, I did some work looking at School District 45, your school district, and looking at what's called your Early Development Index Vulnerability Rate, which is a kindergarten measurement on developmental domains that is done through UBC Human Early Learning Partnership. And actually, your school district does very well. And so you're doing a lot of things right, both in your community and in West End in general. So what does childcare look like for families? So these are average BC fees as of about 2013. So just over $1,000 a month for infants, $900 for toddlers, and $700 plus for children who are 3 to 5-year-olds. In the brackets, you'll see some of the prices that parents are paying in Vancouver. So while Vancouver is setting the bar, and we're second only to Toronto, the prices that are being paid in Vancouver are really pushing the rest of the province, and fees are getting higher every year. So it'll be obvious to you that a family with young children, and many, perhaps for some of you, you've got kids who are raising your grandkids, you'll know that nobody easily writes a check when they're a family with young children for $1,900 a month for childcare. So a lot of families are struggling. It's the second highest cost after their mortgage or their rent once they deal with childcare. Next slide, thanks. So our plan integrates the best of our public education system, which is a former school board trustee. I know as well as anybody, certainly isn't perfect, but our school system has a lot going for it that our childcare system doesn't yet. So in our K-12 system, we have universal access. So it doesn't matter where you live in BC, if you're 8 years old, you're entitled to go to grade 3. There's public funding for on a per student basis. There's democratic control over school districts. People like me have to campaign to get elected and deliver on our promises to be re-elected. There's public support and respect for the workforce, and that ebbs and flows to some degree, but generally we know that teaching is a well-respected profession in our country. And school districts also have infrastructure. So a few years ago when Gordon Campbell said that he was expanding kindergarten from half day to full day, all the school districts around the province did that change in 2 years. So our current system of early childhood education, or childcare, isn't quite as well developed. We do have caring and nurturing, of course, and respect for children's rights. We're very community-based. I was hearing someone make a comment about how Penny Ballum severance. Well, people who work in childcare are lucky to get paid $16 an hour for the important work that they do. Those mostly women who work in the sector have intimate relationships with families, and of course, the whole beauty of childcare is that it provides extended hours before and after school in many cases for working families. Next slide, please. So, quick overview of the highlights of our plan and why I'm here today, and we'd love your endorsement to add to the list. So we're calling for a new piece of legislation from Victoria, an Early Care and Learning Act that speaks to the rights of young children to access early care and learning services on a full-time or a part-time basis, on a voluntary basis at the request of their parents, moving childcare out of the Child Protection Ministry, MCFD, and moving it into the Ministry of Education, which already has a mandate for lifelong learning. A new role then with funding and mandate for school districts. And you'll see from the list that we have now 30 of the 60 school districts in the province that are supporting this plan. We would expand group and family licensed childcare to meet demand around the province. And we would increase the number of early childhood educators, obviously, but we'd also have them working in kindergarten and grade 1 classrooms, as they do in Ontario, to better use of public school facilities. and of course strengthening the ECE workforce with better wages and higher levels of education. So it's an ambitious plan, and it's costed out to implement over 10 years. So a quick snapshot of jurisdictions that have already made the move to take childcare out of the Child Protection Ministry and into the Ministry of Education. You can see now that most provinces and territories in Canada have already done this, and First Nations on BC have been doing it as well. So British Columbia is sort of a laggard in not making this change. Quebec started out in 1997 with a $5 a day childcare system. They increased it to $7 a day, and now it's $7.30, and they're moving to a sliding scale where the most people would pay is $20 a day. But the economists have done a snapshot looking at labor force participation and the rates of single parents who have moved off welfare and into work since their childcare system was developed, and they've been able to document the benefits to the economy with more women, particularly women who are able to work. So, not just in Quebec, we've got more economists, Centre for Spatial Economics, who have looked at what the return to the economy would be with a Canada-wide childcare system, and they're looking at benefits for every dollar, $2.54 back to the economy. So, what would it look like in British Columbia? So a number of economists and again folks at UBC have looked at what this plan would mean. We'd have more women, particularly, well, parents, but particularly women able to work. Of course, more people working means they're paying more tax to the provincial and federal government, which is a good revenue stream. More early childhood educators and business saving money when women who leave for mat leave actually return to the workforce. And of course, families saving money. Next slide, please. So we've got a significant amount of business support for the idea of investing in the early years. Greg D'Avignon has said that this kind of investment is vital to our success. Craig Alexander, who's the chief economist and senior VP for TD Bank of Canada, talks regularly now about there needing to be more government investment into improving the early childhood education system. He's thinking long-term about having a strong workforce, and we've got investment bankers in BC as well. So a couple of quotes there for you. So people then, the remaining question is, this plan makes such good sense, can we really afford to do it? So a quick snapshot, you'll know that BC ended up the March 31st fiscal year with a surplus and is predicting a small surplus for each of the next 3 years. We could actually afford to start implementing this plan just using part of the surplus. So we've just had a BC economist, so not using Quebec data or Canada-wide data, but specifically using BC data, looking at what the investment would need to be in British Columbia. Now, obviously, it would be better for us to have federal government come to the table with transfer payments dedicated to childcare, but even without that, BC can afford to implement this plan because the short-term returns are quite excellent when you start getting more women who are able to work. So you've got some connections, you've got some links to that in the material I've given you. So we've done some polling around the province with Insights West, some province-wide data, looking at in every geographic region of the province. People know, the vast majority of people understand it costs more to have a child today than it did 40 years ago, and 74% are supporting the highlights of the plan. By a margin of 3 to 1, BC residents prefer government funding of actual services over small cash payments. That speaks to the UCCB that's coming from the federal government and the early childhood tax credit from the province that just started in April. And 3 in 5 residents would both consider voting for a political party that implemented this plan and believe it to be realistic. So, where are we today? Well, we launched this plan in 2011. And our support has been growing ever since as a solution to the childcare crisis. It's actually now, with the village of Slocan, actually now 45 regional and municipal governments on that list. As I mentioned, 30 school districts, hundreds of community and early childhood organizations. There's 2 credit unions actually on the list now, several chambers of commerce, and a long list of labor and academics and women's organizations. So this is the plan, this is the motion that councils like yours are choosing to use. nothing too radical. It just says we endorse the plan proposed by the two organizations who wrote it. The plan has the potential to make a real difference for BC children, families and communities, and we urge politicians to commit to the vision and work to immediately begin its implementation. So we're not so naive as to think that we could have a solution to the childcare crisis overnight. We are working with a 10-year implementation plan to first of all lower parent fees in existing childcare spaces and start to train more early childhood educators in post-secondary institutions around the province, start to work with municipalities and school districts on where do we build new childcare spaces, and obviously work to leverage funding provincially and federally.
Oh.
So I'm happy to take any questions. That is about as fast as a provincial childcare plan can be delivered to you. So I know that's a lot of information. Some of you may have heard of the $10 a day childcare plan before. It gets a substantial amount of media, both locally and around the province and now across Canada. A number of organizations, of course, have taken up childcare as a significant federal election issue. But this started way before the federal election, and we'll keep on going until it's implemented. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Council, I've got a few, but I'll defer to you.
I know CMBP is their platform, you're talking about $15 a day childcare. Why is yours lower than theirs?
Thank you, that's a great plan, great question. So Mulcair's plan is for childcare that costs not more than $15 a day. So that's his Canada-wide umbrella. So that works well for Quebec, who's now at $7.30, and us for $10 a day. And so I think it ties in for them, $15 a day ties in with their federal minimum wage they're looking at $15 an hour, and the elections in 2015, so there's some continuity there. But our plan started out long before they put their election platform together, and I think they looked at some of the success we've had around the province and how this has resonated across the province, knowing that it would be probably an issue they thought they would collect a lot of votes on. Quality, affordable childcare.
So which other political party is in support of this plan?
So the Liberals, if you're talking federally, the Liberals talk about supporting quality, affordable childcare, recognizing that it's absolutely imperative for mothers to return to the workforce, to have quality and safe childcare they can depend on. They have made hints around tax changes and increasing the UCCB, and they say they're going to announce their childcare platform specifically, obviously before October 19th, but they haven't said exactly when. But they say they're very pro-childcare, and it was under Paul Martin that they actually did implement some multi-jurisdictional childcare arrangements when he was Prime Minister.
And the Conservative?
So the Conservatives don't support childcare development, childcare system development. Their position is to transfer small payments or medium-sized payments, some would say, directly to families. But unfortunately, that doesn't build any new childcare spaces and isn't enough to replace a mother's income or even to pay for 1 month of childcare.
Sure, thank you. In the business report on the handout, I'm going to speculate that none of the province's top 150 companies are represented in this. I might go partway with Van City. It's either they or Coast Capital. That slogan is families first, so I'm going to give you a tip in on that one. And either this is wrong or that was misleading, because I think the BC Business Council, maybe the president may have said, or his quote, that may have been his personal view, but BC Business Council's not on this,
That's
the
right.
TD Bank's not on this.
That's right.
And
we haven't
if only,
asked them
and
to endorse.
I don't see Nails by Diane as a fair comparison to TD Bank. Why are they not supporting this?
Right. So partly it's that we haven't asked them directly, but the quote from Greg D'Avignon, I actually called him and asked him if I could use that quote to make sure he was okay with me not taking it out of context, and he said yes. We actually haven't asked the BC Business Council. We understand that they want to see the strong business case, and now we have this report which was just released on July 9th.
And who wrote that?
So it was written by economist Iglika Ivanova through the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And so now our next order of business is to start approaching large employers and some of those bigger business entities to ask for their support.
Thanks, Sharon, as well. What's the value of our endorsement to you, and what does it obligate us to?
Right. Well, by adding your voice to that list, what you're doing is you're saying that you acknowledge that in your community you've got unmet childcare needs, and that this is a solution that bears further exploration, and you'd like the province to commit to lowering parent fees, improving staff wages of early childhood educators and the levels of training, and expanding the numbers of spaces that are available for families, and that you're adding your voice to that call.
Okay, thanks. And I noticed you only mentioned mothers.
Right. Predominantly it is mothers that are impacted, not exclusively, but predominantly. You just have to look at Stats Canada. They track how many mothers are participating in the labour force. They don't actually track and report the same way about how fathers participate in relation to children.
Yeah. Thanks. I think you've given us enough food for thought that we're not in a position to make any decision today.
Perfectly understand.
And I would ask Council to take this under advisement, and we'll get it on the agenda for next. My inclination is that we would be very happy to endorse this, but I want to hear people's considered opinion on that.
And you'll certainly get a lot more of the background policy work in that material, and I've just given you some of the highlights this evening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
What, excuse me, what is, like, when you say you've got organizational supporters, what's expected of those organizational supporters? And when they say they support it, what does that mean?
So it means that you're acknowledging that there's a childcare crisis in our province, and that you see this as being one of the possible solutions. And the three pieces of that are the parent fees right now are not sustainable for young families, that the levels of training and the wages that early childhood educators are earning are poverty wages, and we need to do something about that. And we need to build a system that creates more spaces for families to access more quality spaces.
Okay, so they support the policy and the idea of governments doing that.
That's right, through school districts.
Okay, that's great.
I don't know if you're aware that we're actually have a group in town under the auspices of the Lions Bay Play School Society, which is a not-for-profit society, that actually made application to the province for an early learning facility grant, which was not successful. Council has undertaken to achieve the funding through benefactor donation. We are certainly putting our resources behind a facility for Lions Bay, up to and including permissive tax exemption when the time comes on the not on the land, because it would be on school district property, but on the real the buildings, etc., etc. So this is something near and dear to this council's heart, actually, recognizing its strategic value to our municipality as well.
Two last points. You'll notice on the fact sheet around why the plan is good for business, there's a quote from the Cranbrook Council that talks about the importance of having quality and affordable childcare to maintain young families in their community, and that's a way to maintain a healthy community. And the other piece is that no one municipality, however well-intentioned in Vancouver for their large size and the millions they put into social policy, no one municipality will ever be able to solve the childcare crisis alone. It requires provincial leadership, and that's what this plan is calling for. So
Fantastic.
I appreciate your time a great deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we will move on. Do you need some wind down time there, Sharon? No, you're
Just say thank you and good evening.
okay. Thank you. We have one more delegation, Mr. Cambers Azorigan.
Good evening. I trust that you had a very good summertime. And but we have some very good summertime, but a little bit better than last year. Thank you to Mayor and the councils, especially Ms. Waters Hela, that help us for bylaw officer. That the bylaw officer services was very good, but it was like an aspirin for headache, but it doesn't remove the cause. The cause is still there. If you come over there right now, you are gonna see that many junks is on parking lot, spread around. I don't want you see me every time in council meeting with the bald head and ugly face. Just we have one handsome guy over here. Not that one. The only bald one that is handsome. But in this regard, I'm grateful that my neighbors are here and just we had a meeting together regarding all these issues. I want to just propose, as I see this letter that, thank you so much that you gave it to me. I want to propose that my involvement with one, under supervision of one of the council, or one or two, whatever which is, and then we have a specific meeting, sitting together, and come up with all the resolution and what we have to do, and with the plan, and give it to the council and mayor, and for approval. In this regard, we save time. You are not going to see me anymore, and then we are going to solve the solution. Still in the parking lot, actually, we have urination because we have a parking lot. Still we have fun and party in parking lot. Still we have fire after the hours that we receive the smell that they are firing. I don't know what they do, but I believe that, as I stated in this one, that I'm going to give it to you, one of them, that we smell strong smoke of wood fire, which is very dangerous. And they have a party at the beach, or because they have a parking lot. And after the hours, which is 10, we don't have any enforcement. And but in summer we had a few days, 2 or 3 days at the most, that after 10, the bylaw officer was there about a few minutes, and actually we had towed company that they towed the cars. But as I said, we want to go with the ultimate solution. We don't want to repeat everything. I have everything in here. I would like just please let me be involved and just to do the best work with one or two council and just resolve the resolution. Honest with you, this mayor and council are the best that we had ever in Lionsburg, as long as I was living here. And thank you so much. We are very grateful that you have a very good energy. You are working hard, and just we are, myself and my family, we are very, very happy about that. And in this regard, just please help us for that. The signage is bad, very bad. It's small, nobody read it, and just the car, they know. And one of the, as soon as bylaw officer is not appear, or actually he doesn't have service, anybody can, if they call the bylaw officer or Lions Bay phone number, it says that, okay, we don't have any bylaw officer. It means whatever you want to do, please do so. That's wrong. I have all the issues with some of the solutions. I would like to give one page that if you want to just print it or copy for all of the ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
And I don't want to tell you that what was the solution that we come up together when we had a meeting, because it is stated in that letter. And also just Ms. Fatherson, she knows very well about this matter. Hopefully, if you allow me to help just I offer my help for all the Lions Bay, because I had at least about a few hours talking with my officer that he had the experience that what we have to do in his vision and experience. I wrote it. I have many pictures that what they are doing over there. All the time we have the naked body of the gentleman face to my house and Norman house that there are there is a urination. This is not, and we have to prevent it. The people come with boss even, because they know that right now we have a ticketing. Okay, they come with the boss and many people. But when they are talking, they are walking, we have so much noise. We didn't have any rest in, most of the time in my house and my neighbors. And please consider it and let me know if I can have any assistance. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Zordigan. This council is well aware of the issue that you've brought up many times, and thank you for that. As I think we've mentioned before, we want to solve the problem. And so if you were to stick around the whole of this meeting, you'll see that we are going to strike a committee for instituting a parking plan for the whole village. As I'm sure you know, if you solve a problem in one place, you don't want to cause a problem somewhere else. We're going to come up with a parking plan that will be implemented by next summer for the entire village.
Before next summer, actually.
In time for next summer, including at the other hotspots in the village, the hiking parking, the Brunswick Beach parking, the CN lot parking, etc., etc. We intend to come up with a plan. It's not going to make everybody happy, but it is going to be resident focused.
But because I spoke with by the officer that I'm aware about the other parts of the Lions for the parking issues. And also I have to remind you that when they go to, the entrance for the beach, they go with the car over there. They stay at the beach with the car, with a small car, they go in there.
Can I ask you, did you see the RCMP there ever?
Never, ever. Just I'm telling you that.
When you were hit.
Oh yeah.
No, but I mean patrolling.
Someone hitting me, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, but not patrolling.
Never ever.
On
we are wasting money to give it to RCMP. I don't know. I'm not a politician, but why we pay them? There are 1 or 2 people. If you call them, it takes about 1 hour.
Well, the short answer is we're required to have police, and since we don't have our own police force today, we're required to use the RCMP. We paid them $112,000 a year last year.
I know, but simply if you have one person as they call it watchdog, someone that turning around in Lions Bay, one person. Or
I have tried to institute that. They carry Lions Bay ticket books now. If you have read the rest of the package, you will see that the police came here 68 times last month.
You haven't seen them.
And they haven't gone there, but they've gone lots of places. 68 calls out of Squamish is a lot of calls.
Usually we had also CN police, that we don't have that. I haven't seen that CN police. Because there is, we have a, what's it? Cliff jump. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know, we have multiple jurisdictions going through Lions Bay. We have no jurisdiction over the CN line. We have, in the Brunswick area, asked CN police to start...
Cliff jumper is CN police is aware, and they don't want to they are very careful about that, but they don't prevent anyone to.
Okay, so to get to the nub of the matter, we are striking a parking committee. Councillor Waterson will be the chair.
Yes.
She will be putting a committee together of interested residents. I would suggest that we have your name on the list.
I appreciate it. I'll be more than happy to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll leave it at that, unless anybody has further comments. Okay. Thanks again. And for your compadres. We're doing something about it. Just that Rome and Lions Bay was not built in a day. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 5 in the agenda, which is adoption of minutes of 2 previous meetings, those of September 1st and 10th. The first is on page 7. Corrections, omissions, comments. This was a recent meeting, it's fresh in our memories. We'll go through the action items later. Any problems? Okay, so I'll take a motion to adopt.
I have problems with the minutes regarding the presentation from the Ocean View, Road, in that the way it's worded is not the way it was delivered, and that is that the Ocean View delegation was very clear. They were talking about illegal industrial business operating on Ocean View in Lions Bay, and yet this just says unwanted activity. And I think that plays it down. I think it needs to be very, very clear what they were asking us. They were saying it was illegal and it was industrial business going on at that residence, and it wasn't. So I'd like to clear that up and say that's what I don't want it to play down in the minutes. I'd like to say exactly what it was.
So you want it minuted?
I want it minuted that way, that they were actually saying that.
So rather than, so spoke of the unwanted activity, you should say spoke of the illegal industrial business.
That's exactly.
And that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That came up many times in the research, and I just want to make sure that it was mentioned very clearly in the presentation. Other than that, I'm happy.
Do we have to say alleged?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Because it's not proven.
What he saw as.
Yeah, alleged,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's good.
So we'll get back to that in a second. Then the action item. Against residential intent. That's not what I seem to remember. It was contrary to residential zoning.
That's
Was it
right.
not?
That's right.
Okay, so let's, if I can restate those two issues. Mr. Shaw spoke of alleged illegal industrial activity at 300 Ocean View Road.
Spoke of alleged.
Illegal industrial activity. Yeah, I don't want to unnecessarily place people in a position by having unfounded accusations in official minutes.
No.
But if that's what you would prefer, that is what was discussed. And then I would say under the action item is et cetera, to see if a loophole exists against, I guess we could say residential zoning.
Yeah, that would work.
Instead of intent, so zoning instead of intent.
I
Does that
do
make
want
sense?
to point out that language is taken strictly out of the handout that he gave us in council. He says illegal industrial activity.
Yeah, I think it behooves us to say alleged.
Yeah.
We're by no means accepting that.
Yeah.
Fine? Okay, everybody good with that? Anything else? Okay, so I'll take a motion to adopt these minutes. Thanks, and a second. Further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And September 10th. Same deal.
I'm fine.
This was the short special council meeting we had on last Thursday, I think. Is that right? Does this fairly reflect what happened? I believe it does. So I'll take a motion to adopt. Thanks, and a second. Further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? Seeing none, that carries. And we'll move on to business arising. So starting with the action items on page 17. 17 doesn't sound right.
To give you a bit of respite, Carl, I was going to handle the first item, and I did, because I know you may not have.
Which one's that?
July 7, number 11, correspondence, R3.
I'm looking at the wrong page.
It's still under minutes.
What page are we looking
We
at?
just found it.
Page 17.
Oh, this one. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. You said you would.
And you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Do we have any inclination to understand what staff may have done about the siren on the building?
I'm sorry.
No, you wouldn't know because you weren't here. So this doesn't quite reflect what the open item was, because we said, who says it has to be on the fire department building? We wanted staff to mount the siren where it made most sense in the story. So that is the action item.
Okay.
Install the siren, full stop. Or install the siren to be used to alert residents of immediate emergency situations. So we don't. So I doubt anything's happened, right? What do you mean not determined?
I don't think she found a spot.
Okay, fine. Okay, so we'll carry that one forward. Thank you. Now, back to the action. Wait a second. Is that what we do next? I'm going to pull this agenda out.
Are we still on to?
Business arising. But we also need to go through the action items in the minutes themselves from previous meetings. So the first action item is on page 8 of 44. Council to send a letter to Transport Canada to query what the options for a train whistle secession in Lions Bay would consist of. I guess you just catching up, Anne. So that would be your job, but you don't know about it yet.
I don't know, but
Okay, well,
my
now you know.
apologies, I should know.
So that will go into the carried forward items. Staff to craft a report to evaluate the existing suite of bylaws to see if a loophole exists against residential zoning, as we've just changed. Council to then look at changing bylaws to close loopholes. What I'd suggest we need to do is get that report, but not to an immediate deadline. You're going to have to establish a deadline on that one. This will also be work that will be coming out of the Policy and Bylaw Review Subcommittee to do with the building bylaw and the zoning bylaw, which Jim is aware of and has on the agenda for the next Policy and Bylaw Review Committee. So I suggest that all we need to do on that action item is if you can put that in the list, in the hopper,
Right. Need that.
and first order of business is to tell us when that report is going to come out. Everybody good with that? Okay, so bottom of the page, staff to recommend a location where sirens to be installed. We talked about that, we don't know that yet. Carry that forward onto the action item list, Sean. Next, council to review the draft council priority list and bring back the recommendations at the next meeting. We've partially discussed this at the strategy committee this afternoon, and we have a plan. So we will take that off the action item list. It's now sort of going back to delivering. Staff to determine whether the wildlife working group can be a community group or if it should be a committee of council. Do you have an answer on that one? You wouldn't know. I know there is something on the wildlife working group in the package. So we'll get to that and then make further determination in this meeting's minutes. Good with everybody? Carry that one over for now, yeah. Mayor Bird to follow up with the province regarding infrastructure master plan grants. Wasn't Mayor Bird doing that?
Emily Sturdy was here, and he said there weren't any on the horizon.
Yeah, that's true. I think this was the so-called IPGs, infrastructure planning grants, which are $10,000 each. And has already told us in the infrastructure committee meeting yesterday that the application cycle for this year's grants have closed. Just to remind everybody what the plan was here was that we would attempt to break the infrastructure master plan, $150,000 item, up into $10,000 work packages that would mesh together into a final master plan, each fundable by a $10,000 grant. The bottom line is that doesn't appear to be feasible, which is a bad thing, because I'll remind you that in the budget we account for one $10,000 grant. It looks like we're going to get none. So there's another $10,000 hole in the budget for this year. On top of the other ones which we'll be discussing anon. So that one's done. Public Works Manager to research what contractor completed the previous construction of the rock wall and if the design included anchor bolts.
She's not here.
She's not here. No report. That needs to be carried forward. Please, Shauna. On the phone system, we would looked for references and even just an identification of the hardware. Do we have that? And calling of references for the phone system?
Yes,
Can you report, Shauna?
yeah, we phoned 3 different people who use the system, and everybody came back saying it was great.
What's the hardware vendor?
Do you remember Pam?
Again, we don't know.
We
Okay,
don't
I still, I mean, if it's Panasonic, it's great. If
It's
it's,
not Panasonic. It's Acer? Not Acer. It's something like that. I can't remember.
if it's a Happy Sunshine Manufacturing Company from
No.
Guangdong, China, I'll be less happy with it.
And what is our current one? What is our current hardware?
Just junk.
It's not even
Sys
branded?
Prime or
Syspine.
Prime Sys or
Syspine.
there you go. It apparently doesn't work and can't be made to work, even though it used to work.
I couldn't make it work today when I tried to phone the office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that.
It's
Yeah.
awful.
Took me
Okay, well,
twice.
this is a staff recommendation. The money's been approved. I guess there's no comeback on this, so we still didn't get. We got the references. That sounds good. That's a good start. So let's.
We'll get to see the phones next week.
I'm going to make the first phone call.
Good, Danny.
I'm going to leave the first voicemail message. Okay, so we'll mark that one as done. Staff to advise the bylaw enforcement officer of firefighters day and the temporary parking restrictions. I assume that was done because I heard no shouting. Staff to write a report regarding the roles and responsibility of the Board of Variance.
I think we dealt with that this.
We partly dealt with that, but we did ask for a second thing which will come forward as a further recommendation later, so we'll call that one closed and done. Mayor Burr respond to R3 regional context statement request. I did that, and we are having the public meeting tomorrow.
Right.
Mayor Burr, that's me, to respond to R4 update of the official community plan. Same answer. We've actually knocked a few off. So moving, I don't believe there are action items arising from the second meeting last week. They're not, so we're done there. And we'll now move on to item 7, of which there is one topic, Wildlife Working Group, page 19.
Report to council under 6A, action items report.
Yes, I believe it must be.
It's page 17 of the packet. We forgot to miss that
Page
section.
19.
Page 17. The one that I did.
Page 19?
No,
We did 17 already.
I
did
did.
17.
We did that
Oh, you did?
already.
Yeah, Ron took it on.
Sorry. Were those both knocked off? then?
No, so 12B, the second one, staff was requested to install a siren to be used to alert residents. So I'd suggest that we need to sort of harmonise the open action items coming out of the meeting. So how this happens is
Yeah.
that they're first presented on the meeting minutes, and if they're not knocked off there, then they go onto this list. Does that make sense? Or should it be done differently in future?
It's an interesting method.
You see that a lot.
Well,
I think it's not a good method. I think that's what I'm doing. Okay, can you fix the method too?
Can we work on something more efficient and clear?
Work on it, yeah, okay.
Sort that out. Even though we've got this one working now, just fine. But,
You do.
okay, fine. So we're on to the Wildlife Working Group. Helen, this is your bailiwick.
I think the only thing we needed with this was to determine what kind of group or committee.
Well, we were
it
looking
is.
for a council report on that. A staff report on that, which we didn't get. So this is the same report that we
It's
saw
the same
last
one,
time.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to have to carry it forward again because we still don't know whether this needs to be a committee of council or if it can be an ad hoc group. I don't have to tell you the difference, obviously. So is this a community group, which may or may not seek funding from community grants from council next budget, or does it need to be, as part of the conservation officer program, an official committee of council? It was previously. The Bear Smart Committee was a committee of council, but the members of the Wildlife Working Group are seeking a far less formal structure, They would prefer it to be an ad hoc residence group, funded to a very small extent, $500 a year by council, which council's happy with, unless there is a requirement to maintain our BaseSmart status that it is an official group. So we're going to need you to tell us.
I can tell you there are a number of communities in the Kootenays that have community groups doing this with various sources of funding, some grant funding, perhaps some funding from the municipality, sometimes not.
And specifically an official BaseSmart communities?
They don't tend not to reference specific animals like bears. They tend to focus on wildlife.
The reason for that is because that's an official status awarded to us by the Conservation Office, which we seek to maintain. I believe there's only two in the Lower Mainland, as Whistler and us. A, we're proud of it. B, we want to maintain it for all kinds of good reasons. We haven't had bears for
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Although there was actually a bear on Centennial Trail, but he moved on. He was there. He went about his business. Nobody ever saw him except one very scared dog walker named me. Wasn't a very big bear. But, so in other words, it's working. We want to maintain both the principle of BaseSmart and
Sure.
there are obligations that we have to do, and one of them is to have a working group.
The BaseSmart, the question that begs is it a requirement of BaseSmart that it is a committee of council, or whether it's
Right.
an ad hoc group? That's
That's the essence
going to
of
be
it.
what breaks it.
So, I mean, that's a simple thing. It's a call to Conservation Office. Now, the CSO, Peter Busink, is no longer there. He's no longer our CSO.
Okay, we'll find it.
But there's a new one, who we don't know. Okay, so I suggest that that's adequate for that. It's still unfinished. It needs to stay on the unfinished business agenda. Thanks, Sean. Okay, so we'll move on to 8 reports from staff, and the first is the CAO. You can say
There
none.
is.
No, keep it away.
So we'll move on
Thank
to
you.
item 2, CFO. Please approach the podium. No. It was good.
This is a report for information. At the present time, it's looking like we could potentially have 2 properties going for tax sale this year. So I just really wanted to bring that to council's attention. In order to avoid the tax sale, the 2 owners would have to pay all of their delinquent taxes before September 28th. That's the mandated date of the tax sale across BC to take place at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the last Monday of September, which would be September 28th, in council chambers. And the CFO administers the tax sale. We're hopeful on at least one property the taxes will be paid. There's different steps you can take to try and get payment. Originally there were 5 properties that had delinquent taxes, which is taxes 3 years or more in arrears. They were sent registered letters. We've received payment from 3 of them. The other 2 we're still following up to try and get payment. There's different avenues we can pursue. With one of them we've contacted the mortgage company. We're able to determine who that was. They can't disclose any information to us, but we can inform them that there's a potential tax sale of a property, and they usually get on it right away because they don't want the property to go to tax sale.
So can I just ask Pam, are we in contact with these 2 property owners?
We've attempted to be. We've sent registered letters.
But we're not in contact with them, so they potentially don't know.
Well, we've sent, go ahead.
I was going to say she has some more information on this, so I think if we let her
Yes,
continue.
well, the one we've sent a registered mail, we sent something by courier, we haven't got the registered letter back, so by that we know they've accepted it. It's up to
Somebody
them.
has.
Somebody has. It's up
Yeah.
to them to pay the taxes. The responsibility really is with the owner. We go over and above, I think, to try and get them to pay, because it is our objective, and we did a lot of work with one resident who did subsequently pay. Because it's not our intent for the house to go to tax sale. Like, we definitely want these taxes to be paid. The other one is a little more challenging. I can't disclose what the properties are at this time. I can on Friday. You have to publish a notice in the North Shore News of what the properties are. The ad went to the North Shore News for today, but it won't be published until Friday. It'll be published in Friday's paper and Sunday's paper, so at that time I can disclose what the properties are. One is actually owned by a corporation so it's been a bit more challenging.
Yeah, to find the,
Well, also to find, but also we have to get permission from the BC government, the Department of Justice, to be allowed to issue it for tax sale. So there's a few things we have to do. So it's quite time consuming. You know, like I said, it is our hope that it won't have to go to tax sale. If it does go to tax sale, and no one bids on the property, then the municipality, then we don't bid on it, but then we then pay the upset price and we do become the purchaser of the property. And then the owner has an additional year to come back with the outstanding taxes, plus some additional fees because it went to tax sale.
Okay,
So they have
good,
basically
thanks.
another year to redeem the property.
so just for my own edification, we sell the property from which proceeds we take the tax we're owed, the rest goes into escrow and is owed to the owner?
At time of the tax sale, all of the money just goes into an account, it earns interest at a fixed rate, and nothing happens until the following year. And if the property is then not redeemed, then the purchaser gets title to the property, and from that we are paid our outstanding taxes.
And the rest of the money?
But the rest of the money would go to the owner of the property. It's a
The-
tax
the
sale.
previous owner,
Previous owner.
if we
exactly.
can find them.
Well, we know where they are, we can find them, they're just choosing not to.
I see.
We know who they are, well, we know who one of them is, usually you know who all of them are, in this one case, we don't know who they are.
Okay,
But,
so I'm sure there's a process for that, okay, so that's fine. I take it for granted that no member of the municipality staff or elected official can participate in the bid?
They can, it's something that I'm currently taking a tax sale webinar, it's not encouraged. Some municipalities do like to pursue that, but then you become responsible for the property. Even though you don't own it, you are responsible for it, you have to maintain it.
No, I don't mean as a foolish purchaser, I mean as somebody in a position of,
Acquisition.
well, I mean us and staff.
No, I understand that, that's what I'm saying, is that generally municipalities choose not to do that, they wait to see if there's bidders. If there isn't, we get it anyway for the upset price, then we have to wait out the year.
No, I mean in our private capacities.
Mm-hmm.
That, it can be a bit of a gray area. Generally, municipalities are encouraged to do a policy around that, and usually the policy is exempt staff. I don't believe mayor and council can bid, and they often will say exempt staff or anyone in the finance department wouldn't bid because it does give a perception of conflict.
I think that makes sense, so that's a missing policy, I suspect, I don't think it's ever come up before. Okay, so that's something that we probably should put in play. Okay, so nothing for us to do at this stage?
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing, but I just had wanted to make you aware that in case you see the advertisement in the North Shore News, there are 2 properties.
Fantastic, good. Thank you, Pam. Okay, and then you have one more.
Yes, this is actually Nikki's report, so we said Nikki and Pam because I supplied the number on the last page. She did a nice report just outlining we originally had a $60,000 water contingency fund in the budget, and this is what the money has been spent on to date. To date, as of last week, we'd spent $24,281, leaving a balance of $35,000. And just basically at this time, Nikki was saying that there were unknown costs related to locating various water shut-off valves, because those costs, the plan was to charge them to the water contingency fund. And then those letters went out, so I know there's quite a bit of activity on that now.
Okay, thanks. It's a great report. I was very pleased to see it. It's very nice to know that we kind of got it right. Not only did it go a long way towards us addressing our water shortage this summer, which did transpire, so the contingency was well contingency. We also got some permanent infrastructure out of it, including something that's been talked about for at least 15 years, that's a PRV on Baby Road. So I think that was all in all a good result.
Does anyone know what is happening with the PRV on Bayview Road? Is it, if it's completed, how come all the building stuff is still around it?
Well, that was something we left with Nikki last meeting.
Yes, they were going to look at, I believe, doing something to the outside of it. And
Yeah. So we'll just perhaps task you with that now, and that is that there's a big X hydro green box with a man being shocked to death and all kinds of things, stickers. And the idea was to get rid of the highway barriers, get rid of the flashing lights, get rid of the warning signs, and turn it into a permanent installation.
Because it's been sitting like this for a month, right?
Yeah, and it's done as far as we know.
Okay.
But it now needs to be made to look like it's supposed to look like that.
Well, also, it's a bit of a, I think, a safety hazard, because with the kids now coming, driving, drop off, the cars have to sort of merge into one lane.
Yeah, it just needs to be finished.
Yeah.
You just need to move that up the public works list, I suggest. And the thought was also to make the box look a little less municipal and a little more friendly.
Nobody being shot to death?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Thanks, Pam. And Public Works Manager, I don't see what we normally see, which is a schedule of the Public Works Department's punch lists and status updates. I think you may have seen it in
I've
prior
seen
minutes.
that.
We will need to see that because we can't be flying blind for the next 2.5 months. So the delegated lead
Okay.
manager of the Public Works Department will need to be producing that.
Okay.
So we don't need updates
Will-
on work plan stuff because that's in the work plan. We know what that is. It's the other stuff.
What other stuff? Can you
You'll,
help me to understand that?
there's if you look at previous minutes, you'll see there's about a 3-sided
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
I have seen that. It looks very detailed to me, so what I need to understand is what information in there does council need in order to be able to go through council decision making?
What's changed since the last time? Because those are all strategic projects.
So you would like updates on strategic projects?
No, we'd like updates what's in that task list.
Many of them are just carried forward.
Many of them are unchanged,
They're unchanged.
report to report.
There's probably in any given report, somewhere between 5 and 12 completed. Whatever new there might be, I don't know what that is. Probably the Bayview piece is one of them.
So, for example, I think some people may have noticed that North Equipment, which is the contractor that was selected to do the remediation work on the magnesia intake, commenced work last week. Well, council would like to know that. Or, if not that, comfort that we're on track to finish things. I would hate
Right.
to be told in December that something slid and that work's not done and it's now flooding.
Yeah.
So essentially, we just need updates to that thing. Some things are done and can come off the list. If you review that list, you'll see. And we're going to need updates for the next 2.5 months because we need updates. Okay. Mayor has no reports, but where do I bring forward the recommendations that have now changed to council resolutions? Is that under 9 resolutions? So we'll move to council response to Ocean View Road delegation. Jim.
Page 25 to 44. Okay, after the last council meeting, I had the opportunity to talk with one resident up there, and I was able to get a hold of the building inspector, and he agreed that him and I should sit down and review the file, which we did over about 4 hours one evening, went through the file completely, and it was pretty obvious after the discussion that in fact the evidence clearly does not support the allegation. The property appears to have all the permits, building permits, active and in place. There does not appear to have been any violations of the building permits or of the bylaws that I could see, going through the bylaw details in great detail, and I don't see anything right down to noise, everything. It seems that everything is in order. And there is, albeit a long history of this resident continuing the building process of his property, and it does affect the neighbors, but the reality is there doesn't appear to be any bylaw infringements, and there certainly doesn't seem to be, at first glance, without going through it with the bylaw committee, I haven't seen anything that indicates that there was a breach in any part of the bylaw. Now, maybe we may be able to find a hole in the bylaw, but I don't know. I'll find out. The committee will determine that when we go through it at our next meeting. So as far as I'm concerned right now, it's a non-issue. It's a complaint, a dispute between residents.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Jim. That's good. Good report.
Can I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, did you actually go up to the site?
Yes, I did.
And so there's no like building material that didn't seem like it should be there?
No, everything that there is being used. There wasn't any storage of material that didn't look like part of the project. The problem is that the photographs we saw showed building blocks and concrete blocks and stuff on the roadway, and that they were taken at a certain time, and then immediately it sounds like that they were moved up the driveway and stored within the property. And so everything that's there, I mean, he's got some awful big building material up there that he's using it to build retaining walls, or not retaining walls, decorative walls up top to block the view of the ugly bank behind his property. And that's the worst part of it. He does have a storage shed up there, but it's certainly within legal size. And it seems to be just that.
It's a permanent building. It's greater than 10 square feet.
He's got a storage, he does have a storage, a small sea can up there. It's within, it's a storage building just used for storing tools. That's it. And, you know, that's about it. I saw engineering documents, and what really surprised me was that the engineer actually signed off on the retaining wall saying that he was responsible if it failed, which is really bizarre for a geotech engineer to sign off, but he's pretty confident that it's pretty solid.
Well, I mean, I'd suggest that's the resident's business, where and how he
That's right.
installs retaining walls on his property.
Yes.
If they've met.
Well, the bylaw specifically talks about heights of retaining walls and things like that. And
The
so
bylaw says that, or the building code?
under the building codes and under our bylaw, there is a reference that retaining walls in excess of 4 feet or larger are to be engineered.
That's building code.
That's building code.
Yeah, not bylaw.
And no, that's right, and that's exactly what's happening there. He does have the documentation in place.
Well, and Dave would
Dave?
have something to say about that anyway.
There we
So.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that, Mayor and Council, we don't require building permits for retaining walls. We
You just
only
want to
require-
see. How do you know that they're existing then?
Pardon?
How do you know they're being put in?
Because I've been up there.
Yeah, but how do you know to go up there? If resident X somewhere else builds a 5-foot retaining
I
wall.
don't, until I get a complaint,
Ah,
and I act on a complaint.
so our method relies on neighbor complaint.
Always does. We don't go around on the witch hunt. We go purely on a complaint, and it has to be in writing, or by email. And that's the standard practice on just about every municipality.
Yeah.
in the Lowland.
So if somebody knows they want to build a 5-foot retaining, or let's say a 6-foot, 8-foot retaining wall, is their responsibility to know that they need it engineered and that they need a building permit for it.
That's correct.
Yeah. And presumably, if they do things right, the engineer will tell them that.
Yeah, the same with the riprap walls. The riprap walls, anything over 4 feet requires engineering. Alum block, block, concrete walls, railway ties. The only stuff over 4 feet requires to be engineered. And it doesn't require a permit. And there's no time frame on how long it can be taken to complete.
Okay, well that's, I mean, obviously you're sort of one of the experts in the Lower Mainland on that sort of thing. Is that, so even a greater than 4-foot retaining wall doesn't need a permit?
No.
Just needs inspection?
It depends on the municipality. Burnaby's taken that stand, and I worked for Burnaby when we brought the retaining wall bylaw in about 8 years ago. We never had a bylaw for retaining walls. And that came about with a large alum block wall that was built in Kelvin Road. It was 190 feet long and 24 feet high. And at the time, I was told I should go down and stop it, but we didn't have a bylaw in place. So that bylaw that I brought in actually is a take-off of North Vancouver and West Vancouver's bylaw. So
Is that within the building bylaw or the
building bylaw?
It's within our current building bylaw?
In that current building bylaw.
And I want to
It
point out,
wasn't in there.
and I'd like to point out in respect to that, that the one thing that is absolutely required is there may not be a bylaw or anything in place for a 4-foot high retaining wall, but any cut or embankment or slope that is in 4 feet or larger in height is required under WCB to have engineering. Period.
Again,
So,
we wouldn't know
yeah.
if people didn't do that
No,
unless there was
that's right.
complaint.
And that's what they say, it's all complaint based.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Anyway, and the reason that we took the stand, and Burnaby took the stand on no building permits for retaining walls is that the majority of retaining walls are along property lines. And once you get onto a property line dispute, you're in a neighbour's dispute. So it becomes a civil matter. And then if we have a building permit on it, then the municipality or the village would get drawn into that civil suit.
Yeah, it all makes sense. Okay, well, that's excellent. Any further remarks, discussion, comments, observations?
I might just
Yeah.
add, Carl, before we go any further, I have issued a building permit for that particular piece of property too. It was issued about 3 weeks ago, and it's for a $250,000 extension.
That's
So
between
that's
between you or the administration and
So
the
that's why
resident.
we got ongoing work up there and ongoing traffic.
Okay,
Yeah.
Helen?
Yeah, so actually going back to one of the bylaws, the good neighbor bylaw, I was wondering if I can have clarification. Because one of the points says that in the bylaw 5.11, no person may create or cause a nuisance. So what would be construed as nuisance? If enough people gathered together and say it's a nuisance, would that
Well,
be
Yeah, you have to define nuisance.
I know.
You'd have to be able to clearly define what the nuisance is. So the nuisance is something that's clearly defined by,
Is
say,
nuisance defined?
the nuisance
Yeah,
is
but it's
noise,
sort of-
we have a noise bylaw that you go between certain times. If the nuisance is dust, or that may be a separate issue depending what it is.
Okay, well, nuisance is defined in the bylaw. I'll read it. Any activity, conduct, or condition occurring in or near residential premises which substantially and unreasonably interferes with a person's use and enjoyment of a public place or of land or premises occupied by that person, or which causes injury to the health, comfort, or convenience of an occupier of land. So it's fairly well defined. I'm sure we didn't write that definition of the word nuisance.
so who determines?
A court.
There's no teeth on the other half of this. That's
Exactly.
the problem with that.
So
Well,
the bylaw exists if the person referred to there feels that the bylaw is being broken.
Mhm.
What happens? We don't have a court. The court in this municipality is council. Our admonitions and instructions to residents are binding.
But when we look at it from the bylaw committee point of view, we're looking at bylaw, all the way from bylaw 408, 283, 362, which is zoning, 412, good neighbor, development application bylaw, which is 431. We're gonna look at all those, and then maybe the committee will have some comments to make on that and how we can tighten it up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think this is a good result because it sort of gets the municipality out from what is,
That's
we
right.
are now assured by staff, is a neighbourhood dispute.
Yeah.
Neighbourhood or neighbour?
Neighbourhood.
Nick.
So that's good.
Well, we've got complaints generally from one particular person, but in that little area, we've actually had another complaint that came in, and that came in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because it was noisy and he couldn't sleep. Well, it was 3 p.m., not 3 a.m. And so consequently, he was well within his right to be making the noise.
Okay, so
When you're
perhaps...
driving a big backhoe, they're noisy.
Yeah, indeed. I've made quite a bit of noise myself. So, the original delegation's request is that we do something about this. We will take exactly your recommendation here, Jim, that the council will send a letter. I suggest I commence the draft of that letter, and I will run it by everybody at least once, which we will then send to the delegation. As a separate project, and perhaps catalyzed by this discussion, we will make sure that our bylaw doesn't, our suite of bylaws don't open themselves up to potential abuse, which didn't occur in this case.
It's a learning experience for us with the bylaw. And if we can find a hole that needs to be plugged through this experience, we will do so. That's what we do. And that's the proper way to approach it, I feel.
And I hope when you had your 4-hour meeting with Dave that you invited him to the next Policy and Bylaw Review Committee, if indeed we're going to be talking about this week.
I will. I haven't done that yet, but I will be doing that, yes.
Bring throat lozenges.
And a glass of water.
You're going to be talking a lot. Okay, that's great. So I think that's probably a good resolution as far as this body's concerned on the issue, which is fraught, obviously, heartfelt in both cases. Thanks for the report. I'm pleased that we have staff's assurance that nothing untoward, according to our current suite of bylaws, and nothing contrary to The residential zoning of this property is taking place, and we will write a letter accordingly to.
Yeah, the purpose of the exercise now is to determine if we do have some bylaws that have little holes in them that we can maybe plug.
And that's what this exercise
Yeah.
catalyzed. And there may be several things that we can do to
Yeah.
alleviate these concerns in the future in other cases. Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. So there was a second item added under council, and that was item 2, Fred's report on his bash wingding soiree.
I spent the morning and early afternoon in the RCMP E division in Surrey. It was a good presentation for elected officials and whatnot to explain what we get, what sort of bang we get for our buck when it goes to the RCMP. It's interesting because the service we get far exceeds the dollars we spend. We pay for the local policing that we get. A couple of folks come down here now and then from Squamish. But interesting thing was, it was a bit of an eye-opener. They've got investigative services, an organized crime division. RCMP call that the RCMP advantage because we don't pay for that. It's paid jointly between the federal government and provincial governments. And it also includes combined forces, special enforcement unit, the guys that go after guns and gangs, and federal policing, in that if some international comes into our community and sets up an operation here and starts doing illegal action, the federal branch of funding kicks in, and we're not billed for that at all. And it got even more interesting as we, oh, by the way, there's Canadian air carrier protection and anti-terrorist stuff. I mean, it's not something we see all the time here. But they've got a whole suite of integrated services that can come in. Like, if we end up with, say, 2 officers down here, that's a big event here. But what you don't see is what's behind them. And in these integrated services, some of them are, let's see, where did it go? Well, you got integrated forensic ID services. I mean, integrated dog service section. We got dog patrol or dog interdiction if we need it. We got all kinds of intermediate teams, rapid deployment ones. If everything goes sideways in a police thing, they just get on the radio, and you get another dozen guys come down with force, and if the really bad guys show up in town. And again, that's all paid through federal and provincial monies, not ours. They also back up the regular duty officer program with the district investigative services officer. And if you ever watch shows like, oh, what's that TV show, something like CIS or NCIS or all that sort of stuff, this stuff's kind of baloney, but it gives you the idea of the resources that they have. Right in E Division, they've got all that analytical stuff that all the officer that comes down to Lions Bay has to do is get on the radio and say, hey, can I get a hand with this? I don't understand this. And a whole room of people, not just one chubby little girl, oh, sorry. I'm just thinking of one of these programs. Never mind.
Different program.
A unique person. You get a whole room full of people with their monitors and screens, and they're researching like crazy. And unlike the TV shows where you get a, what do you call it, tissue match by the end of the show, it usually takes a week or 2 weeks or something like that. But all that stuff comes no extra charge to the community that's involved. It's all prepaid. I guess the bottom line is we got a lot of bang for the few bucks that, well, $100 some odd thousand bucks we put in. We only see a couple of faces, but behind those faces there are scores of RCMP officers and civilians working, supporting them. It's really quite impressive. I missed the tour of the division because I had an appointment at 3 o'clock in Lions Bay and cut out early, but anyhow, it was well worth it. If anybody gets a chance to go, I would recommend it.
Well, I assume we get an invitation annually, so maybe we do the rota. So now, something like West Van with its own police force, do they just do without all of this stuff?
They have access to some of it.
Do they pay extra, or is it all part of the national federal tax deal, or?
A lot of it is the federal and the provincial stuff.
Because I'll just point out that our federal and provincial taxes are fairly high as well.
That's right.
Well, there's a lot of, they're all part of the integrated police unit as well, so that unit, that covers all the forces, that goes around all of them, including Vancouver, West Vancouver, the RCMP in Surrey and all that, they all, what do they call it, CLU, I think? And
I think that's the older name for it.
is it
They
maybe,
call
yeah,
it integrated.
I see quite often, I see cars from different jurisdictions, different police forces pulling cars over around the Second Narrows Bridge or up here in North Vancouver from
Well, I'm more thinking that, you know, if in some
So it's
hypothetical
a
future.
support, but it's a support situation for all of them, that's what it is.
Yeah, you know, so West Van, their anti-terrorist efforts are seconded to the RCMP. So in Lions Bay, if we ever had our own 1 or 2 person police force, every time we needed tissue matching, we would send it to the integrated something other. We wouldn't have to send it to our own lab, because that's not going to be in budget, is it?
Probably not, Your Worship, but
No.
you should know that communities under 5,000
Are obligated.
As the councillor pointed out,
Yeah.
do gain a significant cost savings in terms of policing.
To the extent that we need anti-terrorism services in Lions Bay, that's great.
So the OCP, let's cap our population below 5,000.
I don't think that'll be a problem. That's great, thanks Fred. Well, I mean, you know, and I'll just interject, in the major incident that we had here at the end of last year, involving death of a child, I was stunned at the response of not only the police but the emergency service in general. There were 3 helicopters on the field. About the second RCMP person that came down was a victim services support person who was a trained psychologist. There were probably 6 police officers, 5 ambulances, including the provincial superintendent. How they got here, I don't know. The only person who didn't get here in time was the single coroner that we have for the Lower Mainland, who was in Whistler, and can't drive code 1, and so had to pickle down here through a traffic jam, which you know leads to an unfortunate situation with parents waiting and victims inaccessible. But that's something they're aware of, irrespective of the police. I was thoroughly impressed at the services provided on our behalf by government employees. That's all part of my thank you to the RCMP, which I have done. Committee reports, I think we've heard from... Do you want to give a quick update, Fred, on the results of what happened in the Infrastructure Committee?
Oh, right, yeah. No notes here or anything. We had a member from AECOM speak to the IC last night. Gave an overview of where they're at as far as the infrastructure master plan. They don't really have too much meat for us at this time because most of it's being research and making assessments of what our village is going to need. There's a bit of some more questions from the IC about wondering if they've got exactly the right picture that we want them to be looking at. So we may have to feed them a bit more information just to make sure that they stay on track, not to guide them where we want them to go, because we asked them for a request for proposals as opposed to a request for quotation, because we wanted them to propose what we need to do, but we want to make sure they do a thorough examination of the village so the right outcome comes along for the money that we're spending on this. For a small village, what we're paying for this thing is sizable, and we want to get the biggest bang for our buck. So we'll keep in touch with them, and they'll report again at the next month's Infrastructure Committee meeting in November. No, October. October, sorry.
October 13th. It's been delayed 1 day from the standard because October 12th is Thanksgiving Day.
Yes.
The other thing that came out was that the Infrastructure Committee recommended to staff that we return to level 1 water conservation, which staff will implement on Friday, announce and implement effective Friday.
Yay.
Don't all start pressure washing at once if you can help it, but we have adequate supply-demand ratio. The threshold is 2, right? And we're currently around 3 supply-demand ratio.
2.5 to 3.
So That's not to say we won't return to level 2, depending on the supply situation as it develops until the main range starts. But right now, we feel confident that there's sufficient supply expected, and demand is equally importantly sufficiently under control that we can return to level 1.
Yeah, that I think is the key point. If we go back to level 1 and people go crazy on their water usage, the supply and demand are going to cross and they'll be into trouble again. So even though we'll go to level 1, there still needs to be good sense in water usage.
And let's not lose sight of level 1 is still some conservation. It's watering 3 times a week. There are some conservation aspects in level 1. I think that was it as far as the ISC was concerned. Good, so we'll move on to emergency services reports. The first one is the fire department report on page 27. Not much to say there. Anybody got anything stands out that they'd like to, especially you, Fred? No? Okay, good. So we'll receive that report. Say that again.
Nothing happens before 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's a good observation. Yeah. I mean, as you know, just this might be a point to interject. One of the things that we're talking to the province at UBCM next week is explicit methods to get speed down in Lions Bay. For 2 reasons. Safety, to reduce the need for our fire department to be called out, especially for unreimbursed calls, which in theory are anything within 3.1 kilometers within village limits on the highway. And the second is to reduce noise, which, especially when it's intermittent motorbike noise, is very disconcerting to residents. So I will be meeting, actually, interestingly enough, with the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, speaking about several aspects of reducing speed, one of which is a specialized return to explicit speed measurement, average speed measurement between 2 points on the highway. Bottom line, I believe it behooves Lions Bay to get speed down. Not speed limits, but actual speed down, especially through the village. There are many other things, and you're all aware of them, that we're working with MOT, but that's all coming up. As you know, I'm going to UBCM next week. So I have 3 confirmed meetings, 2 with small communities,
CSCD.
interesting projects, and small animals. What's it called?
CSCD, Community Sport and Cultural Development.
That one. Talking about a long-term 20-year study to correlate snowpack to stream flow. The return to explicit speed measurement with Justice Department, and potential special funding for a phased introduction of explicit water sourcing, specifically desalination, and a pipeline. So we'll see how that goes.
Actually, I have a quick question for Anne. Do you know if, for the fire department, are they eligible to apply for a gaming grant?
It depends if they have been set up in that. There's certain requirements you need to apply for a gaming grant. Are they a non-profit society?
They're not a society.
They are
no.
not,
a society.
They're Department of Lions Bay.
They're
I think that's
a volunteer.
big no.
They're
Because they're always
volunteer.
Then it's,
NPF.
yeah. Unlikely. I could look at that, but just from what I'm hearing about their setup, it would be unlikely.
Because search and rescue apparently gets like $100,000
Yeah, they're a
So-
non-profit.
But not from gaming.
from
Not
gaming.
from BC Lottery.
From the gaming grant was
Same thing.
Yeah.
It's the
BC
same
Lottery
thing.
is the same
I mean,
thing as
BC
gaming.
Lottery.
It's BC Lottery.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking.
Maybe we could.
Yeah,
I mean,
search
it
and
wouldn't
rescue
be
is
that
a-
big
is a
deal to
non-profit.
make them a
No,
not-for-profit.
you're absolutely right.
It's paperwork.
Okay, well, we'll need a report on that, because that may be, there may be some requirement, because they are peace officers or first responders, they may need to have some sort of official status. I'm sure these answers all readily known.
I know that some volunteer fire departments do have.
A not-for-profit structure.
And they
Yeah.
have received
Search
gaming
and
grants.
rescue would be the same thing, they're funded.
Mhm.
I mean, it's
I can check
mechanization,
into that.
they're not trying not to make any money. They hit all the guidelines, I would think.
It certainly would be a good thing to look
Like a
into.
gold brick.
It's certainly a good idea, if it's doable.
Yeah, back in about '04, '05, when I was with the department, we were looking into getting the status of being a charitable society. And we made some progress down the way. We had a whole committee set up to look into fundraising and all that. And there were some opportunities there. I don't know what laws have changed. One of the members of our committee was a lawyer, and I asked him for information. I got a file about that big.
Mm. Less information, please.
Mm-hmm.
And the mayor at the time was wanting to have a society status set up for the village, and so he asked us to stop work on that and put us under their umbrella. But that never happened, and the whole thing ended when I left the department.
So Lions Bay does not have the ability to issue tax.
No, we do, but they were looking there's a special society status they were looking for some other sorts of things. I wasn't too sure of the exact picture of the municipal one, but I had a pretty good idea what we wanted for the fire department one.
The nonprofit legislation has just recently changed as well, so this could be an
I think
opportunity.
this is worth exploring for the reason that Helen's mentioned off the gold brick out of the sky. The other piece here, and I'm just, getting to not-for-profit status isn't that tough. Of course, with the fire department, we can fund the not-for-profit, or being somewhat creative, if we did things in a different way, others could put their money towards a not-for-profit and get a tax receipt. So this is worth a little brain power, I think.
It's worth some investigation. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, I'm sure there's any number of models in BC on how that might be done, so I don't think it's too difficult. This
Be a creative way to separate this two.
Certainly would take some of the pressure off.
Yeah, exactly. And specifically, if there were, I mean, it may be a needs-based grant allocation, but
I'm not taking this under my wing. I think the spade work at the front should be done by staff.
yeah, I think so. But I suspect that if you do a poll of Andrew, he will tell you who the non-profit society fire departments are, and you talk to their CAO, you'll find out pretty quickly how they did it, especially if they did it recently.
And even if we fumbled for a year or two, we'd be winning forever.
Well, I never believe in a free lunch anymore. I've been beaten down too often.
Well, I mean, it depends on, theoretically you need financial statements, which means you need a year end, they don't have one. Stuff like that, you gotta.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly when I ran the Play School Society's finances, a Play School Society is fairly well-funded, expensive operation to run because they had paid staff. We got a gaming grant. It was relatively simple. You did need financials.
Yeah.
You need to make an application and report, and the funding is significant.
Well, I
And-
want to give it to the right causes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Very good point, Helen. Well done. Thank you. And so we'll move on to the RCMP monthly report on page 29. I never really know if we count the calls on the highway. There's nothing we can do about it.
This is something that to listen to Fred, and I got that part, and you compare us to West Vancouver, I got that part. You look at actually what happens within the village confines, and we're paying a pretty big number for 23 sundry calls.
Plus terrorism mitigation and tissue sample analysis.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like insurance.
It is like insurance, because believe you me, we're all subject to terrorism as soon as we get on an airplane. So I don't think there's anything here that I'm interested to see they issued 27 speeding tickets. There's an average of one a day, more or less. It's not very much when you consider the amount of speeding going on through here.
Well, actually, I take a running poll every time I drive back into the village from being away. And today I noticed, the last few days I've noticed that the number of cars actually passing me when I'm doing the speed limit in the village has actually dropped significantly. I had tonight I had two pass, and a whole line behind me didn't even try as soon as we hit the village. And we're all doing significant speeds on the highway, but as soon as we get to the reducing side, everything starts slowing down. So there is a lot of people that are trying to pay attention. Now, whether they're Lions Bay residents or not, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the interesting
That's
thing.
the other issue.
It's usually the truck that's straddling the center line.
Yeah, well, that's part of it too. That's part of my
I think you were gonna
strategy.
check on the bylaw, something about
I
bylaw.
did check on the
Wonder how
bylaw.
many tickets
The
they've issued.
bylaw from the RCMP was a bylaw complaint from residents that they then called our bylaw officer on, found there was nothing they could do, and then
Oh, so they weren't
Closed.
issuing
They were not
bylaw
issuing tickets.
Okay.
unfortunately I don't believe, who would know? Pam, I guess you may know. Has the RCMP sent in any of our tickets? No, not a one. I'm going to have a little word. On the other hand, some of the stuff that they're dealing with in the village is not insubstantial. The report's in front of you, you can see it. So perhaps just as well that we do have police, albeit 20 kilometers away. Okay, so we'll move on to resolutions, and there was one. Do we have it separately, or shall we do it out of the material from the strategy committee meeting?
Can you remind me again?
This is different, Carl. This is when you go off the rails and the village supports you.
No, this is the striking of the bylaw committee. I mean, of a
Oh, the parking.
parking committee.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, sorry, I wasn't-
Indemnification bylaw.
Yeah, I thought we were.
Oh, I don't even know what that is, but we're going to find out.
Are,
Yeah.
Okay, so
are we in this first, Your Worship, before we get to new business?
are we?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
the
we're
order
on-
I
we're on-
have.
In the
We're on
order.
10A.
No, we're at 9 resolutions.
Yeah, on the
Oh,
agenda.
yes, you are.
We added 12B.
You made them 12A and B.
That's what I was just looking at.
Technically, I think it should be a resolution.
What do you think it should be? Resolutions.
They should be resolutions, but aren't they under new business?
We did put them there. We can do that there. Okay, fine. So nothing under resolutions because of my mistake. And moving on to bylaws, page 31, indemnification bylaw. What's the genesis of this?
In a quick review of the village's indemnification bylaw, I noticed it was very old. It references, the old one references the Municipal Act, whatever. Oh, I thought it would be attached as well. And so it's an update of that to reference current legislation, provide the best protection possible to the village and to council. And it's just a.
Okay, so what has changed from what we had? We don't see any
That's-
strikeout
yeah,
and
that's-
markup.
That's why I was hoping to see the old one as well, but it's not here. so-
Well, typically what we
It-
see is a red line and strikeout. So, although that's very hard to read. So perhaps you can just talk to it topically.
Basically, what has changed is it references current legislation as opposed to the Municipal Act. So.
And it is under the Local Government Act, not the Community Charter.
Correct.
Okay.
You are correct, yes. That was the primary change.
Oh, that's it. Just referencing the current
I-
legislation. So, I mean, we're looking for first and second reading here, so we can do that and still do one final review.
Absolutely.
And I would ask that we do get a sense of exactly what has
Yes.
changed from the current wording, just so that we're not letting ourselves in for trouble. But we're asking for first and second here. What's the downside to not doing it? Are we in some kind of indemnification vacuum without it?
Not so much a vacuum, it weakens your current indemnification to have an old indemnification bylaw that references outdated legislation. It would be good practice to reference current legislation.
Municipal officials are employees and elected officials.
This indemnification bylaw specifically protects both employees and elected officials, yes. Under,
And a quick question, if I may. Just using the page 32 in the middle where it says indemnify, and I just use this as a question, part A. Basically, it's to defend an action or a prosecution brought against a person which is described below as municipal official being current or former member of council. To pick this, what's the definition here of somebody did an inappropriate event that caused this?
I'm not quite following you. Can you
Well,
give me an
it seems to me
example?
the indemnification bylaw appears to be that acting reasonably. What if somebody doesn't act reasonably and in good faith? And I can think of an example.
That, there is some provision for that, as in willful misconduct. It does not extend to, a fine that's imposed as a result of a conviction for an offense. There's some gray area in there, but.
Well, I mean, I think this would be an action brought before the courts, not before council or anything. And if there's an award for municipal, what do we call them, municipal official acting
Inappropriately?
no appropriately within their legal rights as authorized by council or authorized by the LGA or the community charter, then we indemnify them. Otherwise, we don't. If there's a judgment.
This is a replacement of bylaw 172 from 1988.
That's why it's time to
Yeah,
update.
it's a long time.
It's a long time ago.
Maybe that one.
That's how long it's been sitting on the books.
Okay, well, I'd like to see a little bit more about the whys and
Yeah.
wherefores, but that's fine. I think we can still do second reading. The one thing that I did just pick up here quickly was the Public Inquiry Act. I believe that is the now called the Freedom of Information. Indemnify C, sub C, sort of 2/3 of the way down the page.
Oh,
Yeah.
here, on this side, okay.
Public Inquiry Act, I don't believe exists anymore.
Ah, interesting, because this is the template we got from our lawyers, so that's interesting.
I stand under correction, but I've never heard of the Public Inquiry Act.
Yeah, you may be correct, but
Okay, so let's have a motion for first and second reading and a second, and we'll do some further discussion, if any, and then take a vote. So, is somebody prepared to move first and second reading of bylaw number 496, indemnification? Okay, Helen will move, and a second, Fred. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on first and second reading of bylaw number 496 of 2015, the indemnification bylaw. All in favour? And opposed? Carries unanimously. So that's first and second. You've got your understanding what we need to see in time for third reading. Thank you. And we'll move to correspondence, starting on page 36. Do you want to do this?
Sure.
I like your speed.
36, 37, nothing to do, turn the page.
That's good.
38, dear colleagues, nominating committee wants to be director at large, turn the page. Sean, I quit laughing. Page
Yeah.
41, human trafficking and sexual exploitation in BC, it's all very friendly, all here. Will be addressed as a key topic of discussion at the UBCM. I'm not part of that agenda, but we'll presume yes, turn the page.
Good.
Which leads us to page 42, 44, and may I defer to you on this one?
Okay, thanks. So you've read the package. This is a resident who feels that he's been hard done by in terms of what he believed his guests were parking in good faith in the right place, but was issued a ticket anyway. He says he doesn't think the tickets are valid. He sent them in for adjudication. They were adjudged valid. I will point out this is the same resident that we've spoken about in terms of the his perception again that the variance that was allowed on his neighbouring property has essentially destroyed the value of his. He is potentially within his rights to take that complaint further as allowed. It is not within council's purview to rescind, even recommend that tickets are done anything with. But I would suggest that we perhaps ask if staff could look at this again without setting a precedent, without admission of wrongdoing in any way, to see if consideration can be given. I suspect I already know the answer.
I should let you know, Your Worship, that it has not yet gone to adjudication, so I do need to make that correction. One of the tickets was forgiven as well.
One of three.
One of four. So 3 tickets remain outstanding.
Why was the one and not the other three?
The circumstances were different. There
okay.
was, although the violation was very clear, the license plate number had been recorded incorrectly.
Oh, so it
and
was a technicality.
It was a technicality.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, you know, this is not a case of he said, she said. It's black and white. Is it? The resident contends that that other residents park exactly in the same spot and they don't get tickets. Or maybe he says the rules are not clear. I don't know what to do about this. You know, we're not going to debate every parking ticket at this level. Again, we're looking for compliance, not punishment.
Well, I think the other message we get from this is to make sure the consistency of application of the bylaw is there. If the ticketing is being done in one area and not in another for the same violations, then we do have a problem. But if somebody's parked illegally, they parked illegally. I can't see how that could be forgiven. But
Yeah, you're not going to catch every wrongdoer, evildoer as George Bush calls them. But if you are caught, well then you've got the ticket. And if the other person gets away with it for a long time, well that's, I suppose, their good luck. So I don't really know what to do about this. Can you advise us?
I would advise, if you're looking to me for advice, I would advise that you uphold the tickets.
Well, we don't get to decide. It's your decision. Okay, so we're going to leave it with staff.
This looks awfully familiar to the next page, 43.
Yes?
And
Same answer.
I think a very good story, and one which we discussed at the strategy meeting, which is why Councillor Helen has such an unenviable job, and the communication is a key point. I would propose this one's left to staff too, but with the caveat given the multiple no response parts by the resident that today is Tuesday, if he could be contacted by Friday.
Yeah, in both cases. This letter from the first resident is dated, well, it's only dated September 8th, but I saw this letter came through
This
on my
one
mailbox.
seems
weeks
like
ago.
it's been floating forever.
Yeah, I definitely saw this 2 or 3 weeks ago. Come through to mine. I see I was addressed multiple times.
And the other one makes the point several times that he's written, he's phoned, he's come down.
Yeah.
We'll leave the dirty job for the CAO, I believe.
Yeah, I mean the whole concept here is consistent application of our rules.
Yes.
You're not going to get caught every time, but when you are, the rules apply.
That's right. With part-time bylaw enforcement, there can be a perception of unfairness, but that is what it is.
Can we also mention that we are reviewing the parking?
Let's at least say that,
Yeah,
which we
to
are.
say that, you know.
That would be a fair.
At least to make it,
Yeah,
and
take-
fair is the
It's
right word,
forward-thinking versus it's not. No.
progressive, with a focus on resident convenience and et cetera, et cetera.
If it's parking against the bylaw or against the posted sign, it's very clear. If the car's parked there, then the ticket gets issued, simple as that.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
So one of the main points, one of the aspects being raised in the Infrastructure Master Plan RFQ, well, what was an RFQ is now an RFP, was an explicit investigation of parking opportunities in the village and providing parking, saying, park here, meaning either a numbered parking space or a marked parking space. Fred, for example, suggested that our firefighters, when they are on a call, they have to get there in a hurry, they park higgledy-piggledy wherever they can. They're currently parking along Centre Road, which is the road that leads up past the fire hall, in the roadway. So, Fred correctly suggests, let's do an embankment there, culvert that median, and provide explicit parking, firefighter only, but, for example. So this will all be part of the sort of an amalgam of the parking plan and the infrastructure master plan, is to actually provide parking. Not saying sorry. So say that in a nice way.
Absolutely.
Well, I just remember the battle that went on a few years ago we had on Isleview with parking signs. And we all went, took it to council, came up to the village office and said, we want, talked to the works manager and said, the signs in this location, that location do not make sense. down at the bottom where there's a problem with fire truck turning around, or where there's a fire hydrant, that's okay. But everywhere else, we don't need the signs, because we have no personal parking where we are, at all. And so, we solved it by bringing it to council, and it was
Look at
done.
Helen when you say that. She's doing the
It
parking.
was, it was done.
Oh, you don't know that she's doing, it was almost you doing the parking plan.
We
No,
haven't
I
gotten
wasn't
to
here,
new
so I
business yet.
couldn't-
Oh, that's right, it's
Yeah.
not
It's a
been
big
resolved.
secret yet.
Yeah, you're not off the hook yet.
Maybe we'll know in a minute.
But yeah, so I remember that very clearly, and it solved our problem completely.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So thanks for that segue that we planned beforehand. And
There you go.
oh no, it doesn't quite segue into the next item of business, which is council to resolve the voting delegate to the MIA, which stands for,
Municipal Insurance
and
Association.
the MFA, which stands for.
Municipal Finance Association.
Thank you. Both of these bodies meet at the UBCM. I would nominate myself to be our voting delegate, since I'm going to be there anyway.
Your Worship, if I could suggest that council also nominate a second.
Fine.
There may be future years where you aren't going or
I-
unable to attend.
Would anybody like to put up their hand for that? It means
What's
you have
that?
to attend a meeting and vote.
Is the UBCM always at this time of year?
UBCM is always in the last half of September, yes.
But
It's
not always in Vancouver.
Every other year it's in Vancouver, and then
Unless
alternate years.
it's a
it's
5-hour flight away, I would be away.
They don't do it in Hawaii.
No, not this year.
No, it's UBCM.
It's not-
UHIM.
If it's planned, I don't mind stepping in up to the mark for that, that's fine.
Yeah, the idea is that I'm going to be doing it anyway. Okay, so I'll propose the motion that council resolve to appoint Mayor Burr as the voting delegate to the MIA and MFA with alternate councillor Jay Hughes, effective immediately. Do we tell me how to vote?
I have an agenda sitting in my email that I will forward to you.
Okay, so I have to reflect council's will, or do I vote my conscience?
Vote your conscience.
So what's your conscience, yeah?
Okay, so second on that? Was that a second?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And then the second is the striking of a parking.
Just go back for 1 second.
Yeah.
I've got Village of Lionsville Council appoint Mayor Burr to the MIA and.
As a voting delegate to the MIA and MFA, effective immediately
And then you said with Councillor Hughes
as alternate.
as alternate. Thanks.
Got it?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so the other resolution was discussed at some length, and I've lost it in the council strategy meeting. Where's the damn thing?
I've handed mine out to a resident who's like,
Say again?
Andy's just got mine.
No, I got it. Okay, so the recommendation was that the Village of Lions Bay Council establish a parking plan select committee chaired by Councillor Waterson. I'll take a motion and a second. Thanks. Any further discussion beyond what was discussed at council strategy meeting? So I'll call the question. All in favour and opposed? It carries unanimously.
We thank you.
So can I
Thank you,
oppose?
You can oppose if you want, but you were outvoted. Councillor Waterson opposed. I'm just
Better
kidding.
than lump.
Okay, so
Hit my dogs and trees as well.
the final but one item on the agenda is public questions and comments.
Look forward to seeing Council Watson starting to tackle the parking issue, which
Boy, are
we've
we
been
ever.
involved in since 1998.
I look forward to the opportunity to. Don't suggest we're going to fix it right the first time, but we're going to address it in a holistic way that applies to the whole village. So we're not moving problems around, and I believe that we can actually serve people's interests by having a plan.
I think it's something that a lot of people want to see happen,
Of course, it's not
and
dry.
it affects everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so I'll move adjournment. Second. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Meeting adjourned. 8